Do not play the elevator game. Words of a big-time skeptic. This is a really fucked up experience that I recently had, which completely vanquished my skepticism regarding the paranormal. So, I came to know about this weird urban legend known as the elevator ritual. The other world sounded really intriguing, and I decided to go ahead with the ritual one fateful Saturday evening. I live in a flat on the 11th floor of a building, so despite popular advice, I decided to perform the ritual in my own building, using the elevator I use daily. I walked out of my apartment with a steely resolve and reached the elevator. Something in my mind advised me against what I was about to do, but my skepticism got the better of me, and down I went to the first floor in order to begin with the ritual. As I heard the ping of the elevator as I reached the first floor, I went on with the 4-2-6-2-10-5-1 routine. Not a damn thing happened, although my heart was in my mouth out of anxiety and anticipation. There was no woman on the 5th floor, and the elevator didn't ascend to the 10th floor as soon as pressed the button for the first floor. This was a huge ego boost for my skeptic self. I returned to my flat using the same elevator, feeling victorious. However, as the night went on, I just couldn't sleep. I usually have such a hectic day, I am sound asleep by 11:30 p.m. at max. But something was really off about that night. I twisted and turned on my bed the whole night and woke up exhausted and covered in sweat. After my chores, I went out to get some groceries. To my surprise, the damn elevator was out of order. I immediately made the mental connection of the damaged elevator to my performance of the ritual. I got very intrigued. I took the stairs, went out, got the groceries, and had a pretty normal Sunday. By 10 p.m. I was all ready to sleep when I heard a loud and shrill cry outside my door. Which was strange, as the only other people on my floor were out on vacation. I went out to inspect the noise, and I saw wet footsteps with a slight maroon tint to them. Kinda like mud, but slightly redder, like somebody has had a slight cut on their feet after walking in some muddy terrain. I followed the footsteps out to my stupid curiosity. And to my utter shock, they led to the elevator, which surprisingly was no longer out of order. Something in my mind compelled me to get into the elevator, go to the ground floor and check out with the security guard who had signed in to visit the 11th floor. And down I went. 11.10, 9.8.7.6.5. Ping. The elevator doors opened slower than they usually do, as if unveiling something grand on the 5th floor instead of the lobby I was intending to go to. A woman with dark hair, wearing a black tattered evening gown, entered the elevator. Something inside me clicked immediately, and I wished I could run out of the elevator. However, something in me froze, disabling me from moving. My gaze fixed at her feet, and I understood the source of those footsteps. Worn and torn skin dangled from her feet as if she was rotting from the inside out. And the smell. Nothing can even be close to it. It was like a bunch of rotting corpses shoved into one person. As I looked up at her, she had a grin on her face. That evil, sinister, spine-chilling grin which washed away my skepticism forever. At that point I knew, the only way I was getting out of the elevator alive was by completing the damn ritual. I pressed the button for the first floor and the elevator began ascending upwards. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, ping. As much as I wished to get to the bottom floor and run out for dear life, I had this primal compulsion to run out as soon as the doors opened. I now understood why people get off the elevator on the 10th floor, despite it being so risky. You just want to get away from the woman. As I ran out, her voice was in my mind. "Where are you going, Sammy?" Scared shitless, I ran. Only to discover my utter solitude in the other world. It was like the hallway was endless. I couldn't get away from the elevator no matter how far I ran. I was stuck in some sort of a loop. I briefly caught the sky outside through the corner of my eye and saw the reddish sky which I used to treat as fictional crap upon listening to others' experiences. There even was the fabled burning plus in the sky. As soon as I saw it, I couldn't move away my gaze as if in a trance. The cross was laden with limbs and body parts which seemed to have been ripped off bodies. I summoned all my will, looked away, and pressed the button to summon the elevator. To my surprise and contrary to what I had read otherwise, the elevator opened up instantly. I got inside and reverse performed the ritual without any interference surprisingly. Down I went to the first floor and cancelled the ascension on time. I rushed out, traumatized, scared and scarred. I took the stairs to the 11th floor, to my apartment, and crashed senseless on my bed. As soon as my eyes were shut, I was back in the other world. This time my run was accompanied by a chase, and followed by a sudden wake-up. I went through my day, as bravely as I could, fearing the inevitable night and the sleep it contained. I tried to stay awake as late as I possibly could, but I don't know when. I was back there again. This time she was dead ahead of me. I had no way of escaping. Her long torn-out finger touched my abdomen. I was completely frozen. It was like a proper sleep paralysis. Her finger went through my skin and into my body. I felt a jolt of pain around my abdomen and woke up with a start. I was burning up. I had a dark red mark on my abdomen. Scared to the marrow, I went to the ER. Internal bleeding it was. That's when I knew I had to seek help. I went through some cleansing rituals on the internet lying on the ER bed. The pain meds were kicking in. My lightheadedness came with a feeling of despair as I knew I wouldn't wake up from another sleep. I dragged my body to the chapel in the hospital. I prayed to God for the first time in my entire 25 years of life, just to keep me alive, for one more night. I don't know when I slept, but the next thing I remember was waking up to the sound of the janitor cleaning up the chapel. I realized I had gone through the night unscathed. I immediately checked out of the hospital, bought some sage, cleansed my entire house, myself and my surrounding premises. It's been a week without any night terrors. However, I constantly feel a presence watching me as I get out of my house and cross the elevator to take the stairs. I know it for a fact that I am alive as long as my faith is. Part 2. So, after the last incident, as many of you suggested, I sought help from a priest, got my house cleansed and even got a crucifix blessed by the priest which I keep with me at all times. After I posted last night, I received a message on my cell phone. It was from an old friend of mine. He was all like, "Are you okay? Why did you mess with the paranormal and how are things now?" etc. I explained the situation to him and we had a long chat. I got to know that he had an experience with the other world as well. I asked him to come over the next day to tell me his tale as I was too scared to listen to the story and then go to sleep alone. I put my crucifix under my pillow and went to sleep and nothing eventful happened throughout the day until the next evening when Alex came over. It was dark outside and around 9 p.m. I expected him to come over earlier as I didn't want to hear about that stuff so close to bedtime. But upon seeing him, I forgot my concern as we were meeting after a long time. We had a couple of beers and sat down to discuss his incident. I hung up my crucifix over the edge of my chair and sat down to listen. He was in front of me on another chair. I had laid down some salt around my flat, which I have been doing since that day. Alex's story, his inclination towards the supernatural had begun since he was a kid and had seen a woman jump off the adjoining house balcony, only to discover later that the house had been abandoned since a long time and nobody could have possibly entered it. His stupid curiosity made him stumble across a ritual known as the Hooded Man. For those who don't know what it is, read the instructions here. So, he went on with the whole tying the black cord, dialing the number. "Hello, I need a cab." Shenanigan. After some time, he looked out his window. And voila! There it was. A black cab. He went in, slept in the back seat and woke up at 3:33 instead of 3:30. However, he attributed the delay to his checking his watch a moment after waking up and not immediately. He went to sleep again. Upon waking, he found the cab moving on a very unfamiliar road. No markings on the tarmac, as if it wasn't meant for anyone to tread on. He noticed the hooded man driving the cab. As much as he wanted to end the ritual, something glued him to his seat. The surroundings were eerily entrancing, making him freeze in his place. In the meantime, I went into the kitchen to get another beer. That's when I noticed it was getting stormy outside. There had been no forecasts. However, it looked like it was about to rain like hell. I realized I had left my crucifix over the chair. A chill ran across my spine upon the sudden realization. I felt a pair of eyes burning holes on my back. I ran back to Alex and sat back down. Just when he was about to resume, the lights flickered briefly and a gust of wind blew across the room. I blamed it on the weather and Alex continued. Alex's story continues, the way he described the other world. There was a striking similarity to what I had seen out of the elevator. The same reddish sky, the burning cross in the sky, the corpses, and most disturbingly, the stench. As he had seen more than he could grasp and was about to end the ritual, the cab came to a screeching halt. An old woman in the morning gown boarded the cab. Now, although Alex had his heart in his mouth, he knew better than to react, as he was way more conscious of the rules. He kept his cool. The woman was starting at him and he could feel her eyeballs roll on him. The cab was filled with an unbearable stench, and that's when she said in what sounded like a man in a woman's body, "Hic non recipient vos." Unable to grasp what it meant, but scared out of his wits, he said gently yet firmly, "I have reached my destination." He was back home in a moment. Called and thanked the hooded man, ending the ritual. However, even his carefulness seemed to forget about burning the black cord. He woke up with a start when he remembered that he had fucked up. He burnt the thing, buried it, and poured salt over the burial site. However, the entire day he was plagued with anticipation as to what would happen at night, since he had messed up the ritual. As the night dawned, nothing out of the ordinary happened. However, just when he was about to sleep, he heard a thud just outside his window. He had immediate goosebumps when he saw the woman from last night standing right where the cab had first appeared. He immediately surrounded his house with rock salt and clutched his Bible and went to sleep, only to have a restless night. For weeks later, he was always feeling a sensation of being followed and stalked, as if a silent stalker was always watching him. One night, he was in the washroom and the mirror had fogged up. From the corner of his eye, he noticed a dark silhouette just behind him. Upon turning, nothing. That's when he realized, salt ain't gonna cut it. He got his house exorcised and everything began to normalize apart from the occasional sensation of being followed. After the story, "Damn bro," I said. "That's exactly what's happening to me after the elevator ritual." I began describing my sensations when the room began to get really cold, to the point where we were almost shivering. I blamed the weather outside again. Suddenly the lights went out. Ping. I heard the elevator open, which was impossible during a blackout. We literally jumped from our chairs and onto the adjoining bed. That's when I heard the dragging footsteps enter the room. And suddenly, the lights were back on. Part 3. So, now that I've decided to move out, I decided to have a couple of beers with my buddy Alex one last time before moving out. We sat down and started having discussions regarding my move and how everything was changing so fast, etc. I don't know how, but our conversation headed towards the paranormal. We started talking about various rituals, and that's when we thought of doing something stupid. Something I would end up regretting tons. We started browsing through various posts on creepypasta. We stumbled across something known as Hitorikakaranbo, aka one-man hide and seek. It is a game of Japanese origin where you get to play tag with a demon summoned using your essence via a doll. However, after what I have been through, it takes great effort to even post this incident here. I am surprised my shaky hands have it in them to have typed so far. So after reading up on the ritual, we decided to go for it. What was the worst that could happen, and anyways I was gonna change apartments soon. So we were dead set on the cheap thrill. Boy were we wrong. I found an old doll in my apartment. It was tattered and kinda ruined, making it appear more scary. I sought some rice, salt water and red thread and decided on the walk-in closet as the hiding spot. We emptied the doll, filled it with rice, added a drop of our blood and sealed it with the red thread. I chose an old hunting knife as my weapon of choice. At 2 a.m., we immersed the doll in the bathtub and named it Valak. Valak is the first hit. Valak is the first hit. Valak is the first hit. We chanted in unison and went straight to the hiding spot after turning on the TV. No issues so far, although the apartment had become eerily cold, which was a good sign indicating the success of the ritual. There was no anomaly with the TV yet. We eventually got bored and went to the washroom to proceed. Damn my shaky hands. What happened next was hellish, to put it lightly. The doll wasn't there and neither could I find the dang crucifix, although I remember explicitly putting it in my pocket. "It's cool," said Alex. "The doll is supposed to be missing. Don't panic, bro." That's when the TV went berserk. The channels flipped on really fast and the words morphed, forming something which sent a shiver down my spine. "The die has been cast. This night shall be your last." The voice was what scared the crap out of us. It was like a woman's moan mixed with a baby's shrill cry. Bracing ourselves somehow, we looked around for about an hour. The game should not be played for more than a couple of hours. Alex reminded me. By this time, the apartment was freezing cold. And there was this particular rotting stench stemming from the bedroom. We entered the bedroom and there it was, lying on the crucifix. Clearly, this was getting really out of hand. The crucifix didn't do shit and something much more powerful was at play here. We grabbed the doll off the bed and stabbed it with the knife and slit the red thread. We found you, Valak. Sam and Alex are the second it. Sam and Alex are the second it. Sam and Alex are the second it, we said with trembling voices. Then we ran back to our hiding spot. After a while, there it was. The TV again. "I am coming for you now." But this time the voice was screaming and manly. It sounded like the devil himself. Just when Alex peeked out of a gap between the closet doors, the TV had a small spark and the screen cracked up. There it was. Complete darkness. We had it by then. It was already 3:30 a.m. 1.5 hours in. We filled our mouths with salt water and went out to end the ritual. Just when we went out of the closet, we could see a silhouette out of the corner of our eyes looking at us from behind. We turned back to look and saw a glimpse of a woman in white, swiftly walking outside the door behind us into the kitchen. We were scared shitless and Alex almost spit out the salt water. We went into the kitchen thinking that the doll might be there. Just as we entered the kitchen, the door slammed shut behind us. Then a woman crawled out of the darkness of the kitchen, crawling on the kitchen floor and towards me. Crying, moaning and clawing at the kitchen floor. "There's no escape this time," she cried. I poured out the salt water out of my mouth on her, which fell straight on the floor. There was no woman. When I turned around, Alex was gone. This next part is particularly tough for me to describe. I somehow burst out of the kitchen. I started examining each room. No Alex. I went back to the washroom. There he was, in the bathtub, knocked unconscious. The bathtub had turned red with the knife sticking out Alex's thigh. The sight of so much blood made me nauseous. I somehow dragged him out of the bathtub and lay him down on the floor. I knew that the only way to make things right was to find the doll and burn it. There she flashed again, right on the bed, inside the adjoining bedroom. I rushed into the bedroom with salt water in my mouth. There it was, the doll. Again. No woman. I immediately spit the water out. "We win," I said and proceeded to switch on the lights. When I did, there were bloody footsteps all over the house, and the crucifix had blackened, hanging upside down on Alex's thigh. I took him straight to the ER. He had lost a lot of blood. After checking Alex in, I went out and burned the doll. I went back in to check on Alex. He was conscious now. He didn't remember a thing as to how he ended up in the bathtub. After some time, as the sun started to come up, I decided to go home to take a quick nap before starting to pack up my stuff and leave forever. As I entered the flat, the stench overpowered my senses. There it was, the doll hanging from the ceiling fan with the red thread as a noose around its neck. I ran. I know that my next visit to my apartment would be my last, so I decided to stay at Alex's house for a couple of days. Then I would have a priest exorcise the house before packing up my stuff before the move out. As I helped Alex walk up the stairs into his house, something felt odd. I could see a silhouette at the window, but upon blinking, nothing. We went in, had a couple of bowls of cereal, and decided to go to sleep. After my eyes were shut, I was back in my apartment. The woman moving towards me, and I couldn't move a muscle or make a sound. Slowly, she reached me. In her hand was the hunting knife from last night. I woke up with a start. There it was, lying on the bed, beside me. The doll.